Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Gulf Intelligence Daily Energy Markets Forum, where each morning we take stock of where the markets have opened in Asia and the direction of travel they're learning to take today. While the infamous Suez Canal, ever green, ever whatever, is heading north, the sneaky Omar, the other is heading south. Oil price is heading south. Peter McGuire, CEO of XM Australia. While oil prices are falling, Asian equity markets are rising.
Yes, good morning, Sean, and good morning, panel. Yeah, we've got a mixed bag across Asia very much today. We had the Aussie down, we had New Zealand up, and then everyone else in between. Some of the markets were down 1.5%, and others were up 1.5%. So it's been a very building on Friday's numbers, where everything was bid up strongly across equities. It's a little bit of a mixed bag today, Sean. Now, that US dollars continue to climb, building on what Omar mentioned, 92.83. So we're approaching that magic 93 number, that 93 handle. So that could be, materialized 93 and a bit by Easter. The Suez situation, my understanding is that the boat has been moved. I don't know how many meters it's been moved, but I don't believe it's been dislodged. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm not sure how long that takes to play out. That's the news that I'm receiving. So that creates, again, uncertainty leading into the Easter week, all of that with 300 odd ships behind it. I've seen some videos and it's just an incredible situation. So,
well, if you take that the canal can handle 50 vessels a day, and there's about 400 backed up, do the math on that. It's going to take a few weeks to clear this thing.
Absolutely. But is the ship being moved, Sean, that actually boats can get around it, or this ever given can actually be moved, or is it floating now? My understanding is it isn't floating.
The reporting is that it's in the process of being taken, is on floating, back to floating, will be resolved, will open up. The sort of heavy lifting, no pun intended, is done, and it's now about just ensuring the vessel is seaworthy and so forth. So it's still got another day or two in it, perhaps, till the canal opens up. But we're in the resolving end of this problem, and then you've got obviously the gridlock to clear.
Absolutely. Well, I understand that. So let's see what impact it has to supply lines. Any chance that you might see a little bit of a correction to the downside as far as equities rolling across that Eurozone and other markets that are being impacted by it? So I just think that volatility leading up into Easter will probably remain. We've seen big swings over the last week, up 6 and 7%, down 6 and 7, big bounces back up. So we're off today a couple of percent, Sean, around about nearly 2% for WTI. Let's see what happens over the next, 13, 14 hours until New York shuts.
Peter, we have, as mentioned, the big OPEC meeting this week. The resolution of the blockage of the Suez Canal, I think, would probably be a headache out of their way and confusing the picture. How do you see the challenge OPEC faces in terms of its next decision? The consensus appears to be rollover.
I do agree with you in the sense of rollover, but the uncertainty naturally, as we've discussed previously, is that Suez issue. If that continues and this isn't sorted within the next, say, 24 to 36, say 48 hours, then I think it's going to probably be a larger issue for OPEC to consider. That's the first part. The second part is price at the moment, Sean, at that $60 handle, 65 handle. I'm sure that OPEC are over the moon compared to where they were in November or October. We've got a couple of issues as far as COVID re-lockdowns. Manila's gone into something quite severe at 24 million people across that Philippine basin. And then you've got some in Australia and a couple of other, random hits. So that hasn't been put away.
And in the US, we're seeing infections rise again after a number of weeks of decline.
Exactly. So, taking all that on board, and we're moving into that Northern Hemisphere summer, you'd have to be very, very satisfied with also a strong US dollar at that 93 handle. I'm sure that OPEC are very, very satisfied as far as price. So yes, roll over. And the great issue at the moment is, do we see any derailments as far as geopolitical or a risk premium built in from that Suez issue, or something unknown present itself to the market, Sean?
Peter, we've seen some China geopolitical activity over the last few days, notably the agreement or the final stages of a big agreement with Iran, and also the warning that the Chinese have given to companies taking up sort of position alongside the sanctions regarding the Uyghurs. This is a continuously moving story, but clearly the Chinese are increasing their posture rather than retreating.
Absolutely, Sean. We're even hearing that very much so in Australia. They've got a fairly aggressive stance on it, as you know, in from a humanitarian side. So that's the lens that I'm looking at, because of the press here are very, very gung ho on China's behaviour and their human rights issues. And we've got many Chinese that live in Australia, and they've fled from the rule of the CCP, and not uncommon to see big bands of them protesting in the streets, or Falun Gong and all of this sort of thing, and describing with handouts and brochures organ harvesting and all of this sort of thing. So
well, we saw last year the Australian coal industry hit quite hard.
Absolutely.
When Australia took up a position contrary to the Chinese position on the COVID outbreak. And now we're seeing the sort of challenge or potential threat to international companies who take some political stands. Do you think that's going to be an issue to play out further?
I absolutely do, Sean. And I think that's how, that second quarter is going to be a very interesting one, because you've now got it's becoming quite a common, I think, thread weaving through where did COVID originate, the Wuhan lab, all of those sort of things are now coming into mainstream, that people aren't taking backward steps and there's a sense of, I don't know. It's now very much across the media that, yes, that was that's what it was responsible, and that's how it happened. And is there any recompense, or how does the world move forward from this?
And Myanmar, of course, over the weekend was a really bloody affair of sort of street demonstrations getting shot down by the government or the military leadership there.
Yes.
How is that story playing out in Asia? I mean, you would imagine the Chinese are giving the Myanmar military leadership cover to suppress this uprising.
Well, we're hearing that as far as the Rohingyas and all of this. So you're getting a lot of coverage in the press. There's talk that Soros's money that was supporting some angle has been not necessarily confiscated, but it's been restricted. So you're hearing all of this different news, Sean. That's it's so hard to comment from where we are in Sydney, because it's a long way north. But there's again a hell of a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and who's who in the zoo sort of things.
Peter, your outlook for the markets this week. We did see, obviously, the Dow Jones, S&P finish out last week quite strongly. Dow Jones now well above 33,000. It just seems this trend line just keeps on going and going, even though there's moments of little dips down, but the trend line is very solid.
Absolutely, Sean. I mean, you're looking at that uptick there. Is 35,000 achievable in the next quarter? It just seems to be, beyond comprehension. Got through 30,000 and then it just galloped. I thought 30,000 might be the headline, and 30,000's long gone. So
10%
maybe it's
to go.
Exactly. So maybe it's going to be, and you see those moves, 3 and 4% over a matter of a couple of weeks to the upside. So it just seems to be that momentum building. Never stand in the way of market sentiment. I think it's going to be wild and woolly, but I think it's just trending up from here. There's no thought. I mean, I've even got the binoculars out, Sean, and I'm looking for inflation. They tell me there's none out there, but maybe there is something somewhere. I know asset prices in Sydney, the prices of houses are through the roof, and this is what they're telling me pretty much across a lot of the world.
Yeah, well,
So,
the property seems to be the big winner in recent months. I think perhaps people getting out of the equity markets a little bit and finding other homes.
what could well be. So this week I'm looking at US dollar, is it through the 93? I'm looking at the equity market if it continues. I've got the non-farm payrolls on Friday. Is 500,000 that headline? Are we working towards that? Unemployment numbers running from 6.3, maybe even touch 6%. So things are starting to look relatively okay. And Biden coming out, Sean, and saying he wants to spend $3 trillion on infrastructure. It certainly needs at the state. So that would be the biggest shot in the arm that anyone could ask for. So
Well, I
where does
suppose
the Dow end up?
it's always important to see where the bottom of the K is, right? This K recovery, all the policies on the lower half of the K, and you might get distracted and dizzy by the upper half of the K, but where the policy is being made and the stimulus is being made and the interest rates and so forth is the bottom half of the K, and that clearly is in great stress. But as Omar always reminds us, keep an eye on the appetite for Bitcoin. As long as Bitcoin's up in the $50,000 range and moving, you'd have to say it's risk on across all markets. And that seems to be, Bitcoin is held quite firmly in the 50s and little corrections, but seems risk on sentiment is quite solid in that area. Well, let's wrap it up there. Let Omar get on with tutoring his little mentee, and hopefully they'll have a bit of fun. Andre, thank you so much. Peter, as always, great to have your insights. Omar, as always, thank you. Have a great week. We'll catch up with you in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.